Today is June the 26th, 2014. My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop, and we're with Oklahoma State University. Today we're in Bristow, Oklahoma, to speak with Carolyn Foster, and this is part of our 100-Year Life project, so thank you so much for having us today. Let's start with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in 1912 in St. Joe, Texas.
And what month?
December.
December. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Now?
Then?
Oh, at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was the only one born. I was their first child.
And then how many did they have after you?
Two more.
Two more. Brothers or sisters?
Girls.
So 3 girls in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And did you grow up on a farm?
There were periods when we lived in rural life, but other time periods we lived in towns.
So what did your father do for a living?
He was a banker when he was worked in town, and when he was worked out in the country, he was working the fields.
And what did he work in the fields doing? Raising cotton or what?
I think it was raising foodstuffs.
Okay. And where did you go to elementary school?
St. Joe, Texas.
And a one-room schoolhouse?
There were 2 rooms, and I was in the advanced room, in the older folks' room.
Smarter than the other ones, huh?
Uh-huh.
Now your dad taught part of that.
My daddy taught school part of the time, and he worked in the bank part of the time.
And did your mother work outside of the home?
No.
No. And high school? Did you graduate from high school?
Yes.
And do you remember what year? So probably 1930. Does that sound about right?
Well, I'm trying to think.
Or you were 15.
I was 16.
16.
So 1928 then, around in there. Do you remember going to school the first couple of days, what that was like? Did your father take you, or did you go by yourself?
Well, my mother took me.
Your mother took you.
Or in case if I was going where my father was teaching, he took me.
And
See, there are 2 situations here.
okay. How would you get there?
I rode horseback.
About how far was it from your home to school?
About 2 miles.
And do you remember much from those early years in school?
Yeah. I remember lots of things.
Recess?
Yes.
Some of the games you may have played?
Mm-hmm. Some of the books I read.
And what would you do for lunch?
Lunch.
Mhm.
Well, sometimes, let's see, those early years we didn't have a cafeteria. We had to take our lunch. And so I carried the lunch in a bag, in a sack, and a waste paper basket.
And what would it be?
It'd be sandwiches and cookies and fruit.
I want to know what were some of the games kids would play at recess?
Touch me not. Where's one of those games where you touch somebody and you're it?
Oh, tag grip.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have Christmas programs and things like that at the school?
No, they usually had it during school hour. If you stayed after school, you missed your ride or threw the riding schedule off.
Were you in 4-H?
No,
Never.
they didn't. Honey, that long ago in a little country community, they didn't have 4-H.
Well, before you, okay. So when you got out of high school, what did you do?
I went to college.
Where?
Oh, that town there, clear close to
Denton.
Denton, Texas.
What's now University of North Texas?
Texas.
What?
Women's.
Texas Women.
Oh, Texas Women's.
Texas Women's University.
Okay. And you got a degree in education?
Well, I went there 2 years, but then I got married and moved to Oklahoma.
Well, you moved to Oklahoma before you got married, but that's all right.
And so I got one in education and planned to teach school
Well, and did you teach school?
sooner or later.
And what did your husband do for a living?
Well, it was about the time that the war bells rang and he was called into the army down to San Antonio. So I went with him.
And so he was in World War II?
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you work while he was in the war?
No, at that time I had 3 children.
So you worked, but not out of the house, huh? And were they boys or girls?
They were all girls.
No.
No, your children.
Oh! Well, what were they? 1 girl and 2 boys?
That's right.
That's a little bit a while ago.
Huh?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, when you were growing up, was church an important part of your life?
Mm-hmm.
Went every Sunday?
Mm-hmm, we did.
You went. And what were some of the things you would do for fun?
I read books. And I went on walks and visited the neighbors and anything else kids do.
Did you go to dances?
No, I don't think I ever went to a dance.
To college.
I don't think we ever, not when I got into college I went to dances.
And did your mother grow a garden and can?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand your grandfather was W.D. Bentley, the first director of Extension for Oklahoma. Do you remember much about him?
Yeah, I thought he was a very handsome old man. He had gray hair and a nice vocabulary, and he loved it. He made us feel he loved the grandchildren and valued them and expected big things out of them.
So did he live very close by?
Well, part of the time he lived clear across the state.
And would you go visit him for holidays?
Mm-hmm. Or they'd come visit us.
Well, once your children got into school, is that when you went to work?
after the war was declared, and my husband was moved in, called into duty, and down to San Antonio. So I did been doing some little outside work to get some spending money for the children.
What type of work?
Substitute teaching.
What was the subject you would teach?
As where I was concerned, there was no subject but English.
I better watch how I say things then.
Yes, I'll correct you. I stay in the habit here. I'm breaking all these locals working for me.
Does that mean you were a pretty good speller?
Yeah, I'm a good speller, pretty good speller.
Did you have to discipline the children?
Very little.
And if you did, how would you? Would you paddle?
No, I didn't paddle.
She
I
kept
told them about their sins.
She kept me after school one day.
Did you ever have to teach your children? Were they in your class?
Yeah, sometimes.
How was that?
It didn't matter to me, except I got to compare how some of mine were some harder than the locals were.
And did you ever have to discipline them, your own children, while they were in your class?
With a tongue lashing.
Never made them write lines?
No, I felt about writing lines was some foolish labor.
Would you teach cursive writing?
Yeah,
They don't do that too much anymore.
well, they do it some, especially old-fashioned teachers.
So where did you teach?
Well, I taught out in the country, and we rode bareback. My husband and I rode bareback, not bareback, but
No,
with the saddle, across Mud Creek to get across over into Texas where the school was.
that's
So-
your daddy, not your husband.
Huh?
That's your dad.
Yeah, my daddy, my father was a teacher.
And then you wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah, because I had teachers on both sides. Our family's lousy, but school teachers.
So after the war, did you move to Oklahoma?
We moved back to Oklahoma. My father moved back to Oklahoma. He got in the bank in Bristow, and we built a home out in the country.
Let's back up a minute and let you tell me how you met your husband.
Well, let me think. That's been so long ago.
Did he go to school with you?
No, yeah, he went to school. His family hadn't particularly been interested in education. They hadn't gone on to advance, but he was one that they lived down in what's where the Camel Camp Farm is down in Texas, and that's where they lived. And when he got old enough to want to go to college, they let him go, and they helped him and helped buy his clothes and everything. And he was the president of a youth group in that whole district, and they had asked him to be head of it. And I was a new girl coming in to the town of St. Joe, so he went by to meet me. And that was the famous thing. He was lost. He was in love, and so he was living in Bristow, but he was driving to Stillwater every weekend so he could see me. So we just got married, and we had the little neighbor preacher there in the community come down to the grandma's house and marry us. And I've always felt just as well married, being married to a Baptist, whatever preacher he was, after school, that we'd have fun going to a house of religion and stood in front of the whole audience and said, "I do" there.
How did he ask you? Do you remember how he proposed?
He just began to talk about when we got married.
He just assumed you were going to say yes.
Yeah.
And you were living in Stillwater?
No, I was living in St. Joe, Texas.
No, you were living in Stillwater.
Down at that time.
No.
Because, see, I'd gone down there to work.
Well, did you live in Stillwater at some point?
Yeah, we lived in Stillwater at some point, yeah. Because that was our home base.
Tell them where
Up in Stillwater,
tell them where your house was.
huh?
Tell them where your house was, where I was born, in Stillwater.
What?
Do you remember your little house? Yeah.
My grandparents had built a home right there off of the main street, off of Main Street. And as business grew, what was that big department store there?
Cats.
That one, and there were several things that had done real well. And so we decided we'd furnish them some money, give them some, buy some things. So we did, but we bought things and kept them and bought some clothes. You know, you never go around a town like that without buying clothes. Now, any other questions?
So you lived in Stillwater for a little while?
Yeah. Well,
And your daughter was born there?
My folks were my husband's folks lived in Bristow. So we'd go home there in the summertime or on vacations and things, but we'd always go back to my grandfather had been made the head of the extension division there. So he would give us a job out there, give me a job out there so we can make a little money and afford to stay. So that's the way we managed.
What kind of job?
Office job.
Well, did you attend Oklahoma A&M?
Yeah, I went to wound up going to Oklahoma OSU an awful lot for several years, off and on. And then by the time I got out, I went in full time, and he went in full time in the bank, and so we probably had a fairly decent income. By that time, I had three girls.
No.
One daughter and two sons?
No, I had 3 daughters.
No, honey, you were one of 3 daughters. But I was your first daughter, and then...
Oh, I get my generations mixed.
That's okay.
There were boys in this one. I never could quite get used to having boys, but
What did you teach school in Stillwater?
No, I never did teach school in Stillwater. I know the first two school teaching I did was my husband was teaching country school across the Red River. No, it wasn't Red River. It was still in Oklahoma. But you had to cross Salt. What's that creek called that has
Mud Creek?
Huh?
Was that Mud Creek? Mud Creek?
Mud Creek. We had to cross Mud Creek to get there. So if we'd gone by road, we'd had to drive around for about 25 miles. This way we cut through and waded Mud Creek and got there in, well, an hour and a half. And he was teaching on that side of Mud Creek anyway. I never forget the time how embarrassed I was. There was just two classrooms, and I was in the older classroom where they were bigger kids, and he always took the little group for that particular lesson and had them sit up on the counter, up on the little platform with him, and he questioned them, and the rest of us were supposed to attend to business and prepare our lesson and everything. But I didn't. I was so curious. I listened. I wanted to know what those older kids were learning. Were you ever like that when you were little? You always want to know what the older ones were doing. They were trying to sneak something over on you. So I was listening to it, and finally he asked a question. Because he probably had 12 in that class that were sitting around him up on his platform. And so I put my hand up, and he thought maybe I probably wanted to go to the bathroom, so he nodded. So I asked the question, I answered the question. Well, they all just collapsed. That was the youngest class in that room. The other room was a little bitty kids from 5th, 6th grade on down. And these were the older kids, and here I'd butted in and answered a question when I got out of line. But they thought it was so funny. And I know Arthur was real proud of me because I knew the question. The teacher did. So. And we had cake sales, and the boys all came and bought our pies or whatever they were. It was fun because by riding the horseback, and I had a horse and a wagon, a horse and a buggy, a horse with harness on, so I just crawled on that horse and rode across the creek with the rest of them. Life, you get to thinking about life was real interesting just a lot of ways. And when we had a cake sale or anything like that, we just rode across the creek. We didn't drive around that long way to get to the school ground. Did that answer your question?
It did. Did your horse have a name?
But I've forgotten. That's been a long time ago, honey. Wasn't very important, I guess, at that.
Well, did you learn how to sew your own clothes? Did your mother sew or you sew?
My mother sewed beautifully, and she sewed when they started me off that fall at this little country school to ride across and go. They had sent a catalog about what we're supposed to have to go to this girls' school down there, and she made it all, and so I had plenty of clothes. And
did she teach you?
well, I wasn't very interested in learning. I observed how much she did, and applied it later, but I don't know that she ever did much teaching.
Well, how did you get to college when you left home? Did they take you in a car, or did you ride a train, or? How did you get there?
At this one, I had to go down and stay a week at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd come get me or bring me back on weekends.
How would they come though? In a Model T or in a horse and wagon or what?
No, he probably was a Model T.
Yeah, back that time. Do you remember getting your first car?
Gosh, no. I don't know that I ever have.
Or learning how to drive?
Well, my mother taught me to drive in self-defense. She had to so she could protect her interests. And I don't actually remember, except that I learned fast and pretty well.
What about you seeing the airplane for the first time?
My what?
An airplane.
Seeing it? Well, I've been seeing airplanes all the time.
But do you remember the first time you saw one?
No.
No. Well, in the home that you grew up in, can you describe it? The house?
Well, we wound up after my husband was 4 years in the war down in San Antonio. He was stationed there, and he knew much more about the military part than the commanding officer did. The commanding officer wouldn't let him go, and he had to stay there in Boston. And and we went to just a regular public school there. I did. But I loved San Antonio. Have you ever lived in San Antonio?
No.
Well, if you ever get a chance, have you lived in San Antonio?
I visited.
It's what?
I visited there a few times.
Yeah. It's a lovely city, and it's still old. And of course, all the time I was going to school, my grandfather came down checking something. My grandfather had been appointed at the college to check things. I've forgotten what it was he was checking for him. But he came down to check it and found out that I wasn't. My grandfather was horrified. She isn't in school? He didn't realize I was getting as good an education, just the way I was, and going and reading, and my parents would correct me and help me. And so he was so horrified that my granddaddy said, Teresa, send him down there to her house. He's offering to keep her this semester. It was hurting this man's conscience. He believed in, strong student and that sort of thing, and here I was just messing around. So he took me in for a semester, and I read all the. Well, there are two series of books. One was I can't remember, but they were not good commercial books about a man taking care of a lighthouse and other one, that sort of thing. Like paperback books are fixed like that. Well, I had read all his paperback books, and so by the time school was out, I could just go home and not have to go back. But I'll never forget Marietta. Have you all been to Marietta?
No.
That's a nice little town, and of course it was littler still then. And because after all that was, 45 years ago?
Oh, longer than that.
Longer than that, yeah.
You mentioned Teresa. Who was that?
Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
That was my mother.
Your mother.
She was, her father was
W.D. Bentley.
was the Bentley that had the department
Okay.
and it had all the responsibility and everything. And that,
So your mother's name was Teresa. What was your father's name? Your father.
wait a minute. I haven't thought of it. Arthur Morgan.
No, that's your husband.
Well, that's his name for his.
No, your dad was Mr. Camp. Sterling?
It's Sterling V. Camp. My
You'll get it
daughter-
eventually, huh?
My daughter reminded me. Do you see my picture up on the wall?
Mhm.
Do you see all the children and people I have in my life now?
A lot to remember.
Yeah.
So Teresa and Sterling, your parents. And Teresa's mother, or father, was W.D. Bentley. And what was her mother's name? Your grandmother's name? Julia? Is that
Julia.
Julia, is that correct?
Julia Bentley. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then my grandfather was
W.D.
W.D.
And then your husband was Arthur.
Arthur Morgan.
And then your three children were
Claire Edith, and
Stephen Henry.
Julianne,
No, that's your sister.
and then the Rachel.
That's your sisters. Those are your two sisters.
sisters. Juliana and Rachel were your sisters. So
Uh-huh.
sons were Stephen.
Steve and Henry and George Edward.
Yeah,
Stephen George.
Yeah.
Okay, we got it.
yeah.
You must have had a good relationship with your sisters. Do you remember anything about them?
Well, I was pretty big. I was 3 or 4 years older than each of the girls. See, so that made them quite a bit younger, and I kind of had bossing powers.
Do you have a fond memory of bossing them? Or do you have a fond memory of your sisters?
Yes, I love my sisters, and they were smart. They pulled up to their line of the duty to the family's name, keeping the grades up and everything. Yeah, I didn't have to tend to them.
Did you all three share the same room? Bedroom?
Yeah, there were times when we had to, and life was like that. When we moved back to Stillwater, we had lots more room, and my grandfather was something in Stillwater. What was he?
He was with the college.
Yeah, he was with the college. Yeah.
What about her teaching? What about your teaching years? Can you tell us a little bit about being a teacher? What it was like for you to be a teacher?
Well, I loved it. Listen, teaching just right down my alley. I have a captive audience.
And what grades did you teach?
Well, high school. I never taught below high school.
Yeah, you did. You started in 7th grade, and 8th
Yeah, but
grade.
I went on up with the time that.
And with your youngest son. Because I had you in the 8th grade. That was the first year you taught.
First year I taught was the 8th grade year. Well, I knew that I didn't teach very many years.
Hey, go ahead.
Do you have any fond memories of teaching? Any stories that you remember?
Oh, I love teaching. I'd have taught for nothing. I'd say that's Arthur. Arthur, this is the most fun I ever had. I would do it for nothing. He'd say, hush, the school board will hear you.
Where did you teach primarily? What town? In Bristow?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any favorite students?
Oh, they're all my favorite students. I love them. I've still got them. I'm still teaching them. They come in, I correct their grammar.
You ain't got no.
And I have broken them of a lot of habits, I tell you.
Adders group.
Huh?
You had your adders group.
Oh yeah, I had the adders list. The family had, the whole bunch had a, like, where's an at? Where's an at? I just can't stand that. So I had an adders list. And they did that, they said that, I drew a diagram of it on the board, what happened. And in black and white chalk. And they all got to know what the adders list was.
You don't end the sentence with at. Right.
Mhm.
Where are you at? And I'd make a diagram and show it, and it makes a big impression on kids. When the teacher has a fit over something, you think, gosh, this is awful.
And then you correct yourself.
You teach them to answer the phone, how to answer it correctly.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Do you used to teach them how to answer the phone correctly?
What did I do? What would I have?
You tell
Oh,
them
this
how
is
to,
he, or this is she. Yeah. And then they didn't think that sounded right, but if I insisted on it, it's amazing what you can insist on when you're teaching a bunch of kids. I loved it. That's one reason I like it out here, because I've just got a fresh crop of students. See, I've got lights up there over my beds, and we got the curtains washed.
Did you ever have any what we would call problem children in school? Did you have to deal with any children that any students you had to correct or discipline?
Well, I tried to keep them out. I handled that by calling them out for personal surveys and talking what they did and showing what they were doing wrong. And I found the kids were pretty reasonable about everything. See, I love that window. Who picked my
George picked it up.
My oldest son picked this room for me, and I've been so happy with it. I've got a separate bathroom there, and I have a nice big closet here and here.
Now here in the facility, do you ever see any former students?
Yeah, I've been in here in my bed. I stay on the bed pretty much, looking out the window. And I heard men coming down the hall, and gosh, is that old girl still alive? I thought she was dead a long time ago. I heard it good and loud.
When they saw her name on
This passageway through here, this is when they saw my name on the door. Claire saw my name.
Oh, they know, they saw it.
Huh?
They saw it.
Huh?
Did they?
Well, no, open the door and let them see it.
That's okay. Well, we saw it when we came in.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, okay.
Did they come on in and see you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you still have to correct their English?
Yeah, I don't hesitate. By that time, I've had such a reputation for correcting that I don't hesitate to correct anybody.
Do you want to tell about the only paddling you ever gave?
What?
Do you want to tell them about the only time you paddled up somebody? in school. You remember the last?
Oh, it's been a long time since I've
Yeah.
had that. Tell me when, remind me when I've had somebody.
Well, it was after you'd retired and they had you come in and take care of the library.
Oh, I was punishing them for,
Well, this one boy kept coming in and running around in the library. And you took him down to the principal and,
I don't remember that.
well, good. But that was the only time I ever heard of her losing her cool.
But I have always loved teaching and working with them. And kids nowadays they're pretty receptive. They really are, and they believe you when you say the God will get them if they don't watch out. If they don't do what this is right. And how about the little picture, Claire? Can you show them?
Which one was?
Don't we have
George?
one?
Yeah, that's nice too.
Were you president of the school board in Bristow?
Was I what?
President of the school board? Or on the school
The
board?
latest was that Arthur and I were both.
Well, after you retired, you ran for school board, and you were on school board for like 12 years. And part of that time you were the head.
And part of the time he was on there too.
Oh, no, he was on the VOTEC school board. So they, at the same time.
Education's always been very important.
Very most important thing on earth. You can teach anything with education. How to behave and I lie there and look out that window. And the boys picked that for me. Oh, there went somebody. See, there goes somebody out there right now. That they're the passerbys or people that wouldn't even know I was out here, didn't know I was alive. I've heard them come by and say, "Is that old girl still alive?" To whoever their people are visiting with.
Do you remember when you retired, what year it was? How long ago?
I don't remember.
Oh, it's been quite a while.
65? Oh, when she was.
Yeah, I think that.
We could look it up.
Probably in the 70s then,
70s,
1970s something. That's okay.
I think so.
See, we've got this one, this thoroughfare that goes west. I'm not sure how long this highway is, but I swear it's a mile long.
Oh, you mean your hallway? It is long.
Because in the first place, we're just the second block up from the door there that opens on the end of Main Street.
Well, did you ever think you'd make it to 100?
You know, I didn't stop to think about it. I just figured God would take care of me.
Did either of your sisters make it to 100?
You know, I've lost.
They both been dead for quite a while. Aunt Judy was getting close to 100, but she didn't like this.
Yeah, none of the family has me.
Well, what do you think your secret is to making it to 100?
I just stay busy and stay interested in what I'm doing and what's going on that I might get mad and gripe if they didn't put me to 100.
Well, describe a typical day for us. What time do you get up?
Well, it's varied so through the years. Claire passes a little, honey passes that little, I think there's one that shows
What?
five generations.
No, it's on the window over there.
Yeah, they saw it.
They saw it. We have another one, 5 generations of boys.
Yeah.
5 generations, that's pretty good.
Where is the book that's 5 generations?
No, it's a picture.
Yeah, the picture, but down below it's to,
I don't know.
We'll look at it here in a minute.
Yeah,
We'll look at it here in a minute.
I think it's getting tired.
Yeah. Well, when history is written, what do you want it to say about you? How do you want to be remembered? What do you want to be remembered for, I guess?
but then I cared about the kids and I did the very best I could for them. 'Cause, you know, sometimes you don't realize until you get into public education what you run into at homes and things like that. And I have always loved I love school kids. It's not a case of just being selfish liking. It's just well, I'm just looking at we took the curtains down, and the girls took the curtains and took them down to the laundry and got them laundered and got them ironed, put them up. Can you see them? They're back over that window. And
They take good care of her.
You have a nice place here. It's a good place.
and I just know just one room past me to the end of this. And this thing is the eternalest, longest thing you ever saw. It's going up. I swear it goes up a mile. I don't even try to walk it anymore. I just
I take it your lunch is
get
coming.
something to ride.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say let's just stop here. Thank you very much for talking with us today.